right, welcome back, everybody. So this is Inside Look, South Jersey Girls Basketball, and we have another exciting guest and interview today planned. This is Coach Brandon Lyons, and he is the head coach of Woodstown High School, the girls basketball program. So I'd like to welcome him here to the show. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you? Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking some girls hoops.
Yeah, man, I'm very, very excited. This is great. So let's just get started. So, I know before, and we did a little chat and things like that, but you have a young one at home.
That's right. So I have a little boy named Owen. He just turned about 14 months. And we actually have another one on the way who's due in August. We just found out actually last Friday that we're having a little baby girl.
Wow, that's exciting, man. Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I know, kids, to me, I love kids. Kids are like a blessing, but they're also sometimes they're gonna make your hair go gray. But
oh my goodness, I don't know how people do it, man. I'm sitting there going we did pretty good with one, and now I'm going, I don't know how we're gonna do two. I see some people running around with four, and I'm like, man, more power to you.
Yeah, I actually have 4 kids.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, but the good thing is I have a 16-year-old, then I have a 13-year-old, so a sophomore, and then a 7th grader, and then my son just turned 6 as a kindergartner, and then I have a preschooler who's 4. So my older kids help out, but the problem is they're so active that they're never really home.
Right.
But
it's funny because I've talked to people who say the more you have, the easier it gets. But I don't know how they say that, man. It's like running around like crazy. My poor wife, how busy I am. She's pretty much on her own. It feels like for 3 months out of the year.
Yeah, well, it's tough. I guess you get better at time management too. But I'm really
absolutely
your family, man. So why don't you talk about where you grew up and where you went to school?
Sure. So I grew up in Franklinville. It's a little town kind of in between Glassboro and Vineland, and I went to Delsea High School. So my family moved into Franklinville when I was around 5, and I've lived here ever since. In fact, me and my wife purchased the house that I grew up in from my parents as they were kind of downsizing and moving out. So we still live in Franklinville today.
That's pretty exciting. So can you talk a little bit about the town? Because I know I've only played, my daughter's played soccer down there. And I know there's a lot of, people that listen that are from all across the state. So maybe they don't know about the town, but I might know it as maybe a lot of farmland.
Yeah, it's very flat. It's bigger than you may think, even though it is a very, considered a small town. It's still 54 square miles. But we're pretty much known for a couple of things. So, we got the Franklinville Inn, which is right there at the main intersection in Franklinville, which a lot of people come from, all over to go there and get a good meal. We also have Lake House Restaurant, which is not too far down the road. But other than that, man, it's really remote. We got a Wawa and we got some gas stations, and then you blink and you're in Vineland, so.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I know that we went there for soccer, and, the fields and the rec, just the grass there, and it's just beautiful scenery. I think it was a nice ride. Once you get off the highway and you drive, it's just beautiful. I think that's very representative of mostly South Jersey here. I mean, especially the further south you go, the more farmland there is. And it's just a quiet, nice area. So that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. We love it here. We live right on the lake. So I prefer the quiet and to be away from people. I'm not big into the city and, cars driving by. So we love where we live. We got a nice view, and I'm hoping to be here for a long time.
Oh, that's great. So, talk about maybe some of the sports that you played growing up and your interest in sports and why you've been so interested in it.
Sure. I grew up in a family where I had a lot of cousins, and a lot of my cousins played sports. So I, didn't really focus on one sport. I played a little bit of everything. We played street hockey out in front of the house in the summertime, and in the spring we played ice hockey when the lake froze. And then, I also played soccer, as a kid. I played baseball. I played roller hockey because our town actually put up a roller hockey rink, and we had a league. And obviously I played a little bit of basketball, not only for the town, but a little bit in high school. But, I wasn't stellar by any means at anything. I just loved playing sports. So I played as many different sports as I could, probably to a flaw at times, because I never really got singularly focused on one thing. But I played everything I could. I love sports. I still love playing sports. I joke because I'm probably a better athlete now than I was when I was in high school.
That's great. So, you graduate from Delsea and then you go on to college. So where did you go to college and what did you study?
So I had a couple of choices of where I was going to go, but I actually ended up going to Rowan. My parents kind of made a deal with me, if you commuted and, kept the tuition down, that they would take care of the tuition end of it. And I actually stayed around here so that I could work and go to school at the same time. So when I wasn't in school, I was working at Wawa, trying to save money, and also so that my parents would take care of my tuition. And I've learned since then that, coming out of school with no student debt was a big blessing that I probably didn't appreciate at the time, but I certainly appreciate it now.
Yeah, that's probably one of the smartest things that you could have ever have done. I mean, just think about it now. Like, imagine if you had all those student loans. I mean, it would be
Mm.
difficult to make things, happen. And you have a new family. Your family's relatively young, so now you don't have as much, debt, and you can really just enjoy your family. You can and have your family grow, which is fantastic. So, what made you become a teacher?
So I really, when I was younger and thinking about where I was going to go, like many kids when they're junior and senior in high school, I started getting stressed out because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I sat down and had a conversation with my parents and, really try to look at, like, what am I good at? What do I love to do? And obviously love sports. Like, that was a no-brainer. But then I also felt like I was really good at the time working with kids. I worked at a lot of summer camps when I was younger, helping out, volunteering, being a counselor, helped out at little basketball camps here and there, and really developed a love for working with younger people. So when I put those together, it was like, go be a phys ed teacher. So I really only applied to one college. I didn't apply anywhere else. So I was putting all my eggs in one basket, and thankfully, my SAT scores were good enough that they accepted me. And then I studied health and exercise science with a specialization in teacher certification, and graduated in just over 4 years. So 4 years and a summer, and got my degree, and then got my first teaching job pretty much right away.
Wow, that's great. I mean, it's nice that you stayed home and you're able to work and help, pay some of the bills. So, did you ever miss maybe going away to school, that experience of going away? 'Cause, I mean, that seems like what everybody's doing now. Like, they're getting the
Yeah.
experience going away to a big school, but how do you feel about that?
Sometimes I do think about that, especially when I see some of my family members going away, or some kids that I know going away to college now, and they're having a great time. And I think that's the trade-off. It's go away, spend a lot of money, have a great time, but then walk away many times with debt, or stay home, be kind of boring, if you want to say it that way, but come out of college with no debt. So yeah, there's definitely times where I've looked back and said, man, if I could do it again, I wonder if I would actually go away, because it would be nice to go to another state, go somewhere far away you've never been, just for the experience. But at the same time, now that I have a family, I can look back and say, although it would have been nice, this probably was the best thing for the long term.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I went away for 2 years and I just didn't really have a great experience. And then when I moved home, I ended up going to Rutgers in Camden, and I was like you, I just started working. And that's when my whole life, like, I started to get my time management and my grades were improving. And it was just a lot better being home. I think, I was the kind of person, I've never lived more than a couple, miles from my parents. So I always wanted to be around, and, I love my family so much. It was just good having a good support network there. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses. And the other thing, like you said, is that debt. So, I was
Hmm.
fortunate enough, my parents, were able to help me with my tuition as well. So, that kind of put me ahead of the game. I have friends that are lawyers, and they lived in these apartments around the corner for us, and they had like these huge debts because they
Yeah.
had these loans out in order to put themselves through school. I mean, they're very well off now. Don't get me wrong, and they're great people. We love them, but they even said, like, for the first 10 years of their marriage, they couldn't go anywhere because, they were spending a mortgage payment on their student loans, and then they were, having to pay for their living expenses. So it was tough for them, and it's a trade-off. So, if you think about it that way, I think you maybe make a different choice about college or even what you're going to spend,
Yeah.
because some people give up scholarships because they want to go to a particular school, but some people
Hmm.
get a scholarship and then they're like, I don't want the scholarship. I want to go to that school. So
Right. I even talk about it with my players. It's like we have these conversations about where they're going to go and kind of what their thought process is. And as much as I can, I try to encourage them to, if they're undecided, unless they know for sure where they want to go, but go to community college for a couple of years. It's a little bit cheaper. You save some money. You have some time to really think about what you want to do. And maybe if you're undecided, that 2 years will buy you a little bit of time so that you can, solidify kind of what you want to do.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that's the great thing about these podcasts is every coach offers a little bit of insight, a little bit of a life lesson, and hopefully people can think about that, because there's parents too that that kind of want to steer their kids one way, but their kids maybe want to keep up with the Joneses, and now they're kind of
Yes.
forcing themselves to go to a place where it's way out of reach for them. It's financially a burden for them, in order just to keep up with everybody. And honestly, you got to do what's going to be best for you in the long run. And like that community school, I know a lot of kids that that I advise as far as my karate school. A lot of them are going because they get that STARS program where they're getting free tuition for the first couple of years.
That's right.
So if you can do that and basically get your degree on the cheap, and spending maybe like a tenth of what other people are spending, you're going to get the same job anyway. Why not go for it? So
Exactly. I totally agree.
So let's go to your coaching now. So
Yeah, sure.
here you are, you're a teacher, you're teaching physical education and health.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make the jump into coaching?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. So back when I was in college, I was actually it was my junior year in college, and I was doing my field experience, my junior field experience, which basically means I think it was for 6 weeks, once a week, I would go to Delsea.
Okay.
That was the school that I was assigned to, interestingly enough, where I would go there once a week on Wednesdays, and I would basically shadow another teacher. I think for a little bit, I shadowed the driver ed teacher, and then for a little while, I shadowed the phys ed teacher that was, that I got assigned to at the time. So one day we had a break, it was like during that teacher's prep period, and I had a little time to myself, and I said, "Hey, can I go in the gym and shoot around?" Because I just wanted to get moving. So yeah, they said, "Here's the key, grab a basketball." So I'm in the gym, it's completely empty, and I'm just shooting around. And this guy walks in from the back doors and starts walking across the gym and just kind of said, "Yo." I said, "Hey, what's up?" He goes, "You play?" I said, "Yeah, I play." He goes, "You want to coach?" I said, "You serious?" He said, "Yeah, I need a coach for my middle school team." I'm in. So from there, him giving me that opportunity, I started coaching the girls' middle school basketball team. My senior year in college. It was the next season, and then from that point on, I never stopped coaching. I went from coaching the middle school team to coaching the freshman team the next year to coaching the JV team the next year. And I stayed the JV coach, assistant varsity coach there under 3 different head coaches for like 7 years. And I think on one hand, you don't want to go through 3 coaches in that period of time. But the benefit for me was I got to learn from a lot of different people and some really good coaches just in that 7-year period. From that point on, I lost my teaching job due to the budget cuts that happened in 2010. Ended up going down to Virginia for a little bit.
Okay.
So I had a buddy down there that coached college basketball. He used to coach up here in Jersey, actually coached the boys team at Delsea for a little bit. He moved back down to Virginia to take over the women's program where he went to school and played. So he had gotten me a job down there pretty much right after I lost my job at Bridgeton, which is where I was teaching. And so I ended up going down there, getting a teaching job, obviously taking less money, but just, it was kind of like we talked about earlier about going away to college. This was kind of like my going away to college. I'm going, all right, I'm 26. I got an opportunity to move and go somewhere different for a little bit, change the scenery. And I loved it down there, man. I was in the Shenandoah Valley, right there in Harrisonburg, which is right by JMU. And I did some volunteer coaching because down there they didn't have the money, to pay 3 or 4 different coaches. So I volunteered for 2 years at the high school that I was teaching at. Really good basketball team. In fact, I think the year after I ended up moving back home, they ended up winning the state championship down there. So I was 2 years, I was able to be with that team and kind of watch them develop and grow and see them win a state championship. So then I moved back home because there was a teaching opportunity that I wanted to pursue. And I bounced around a little bit, went from, it was long-term subs, hoping that it would lead to something. But I always knew that I wanted to come back home. So I kind of took that chance. So I ended up teaching in Deptford for a little bit. I ended up teaching at Glassboro for a little bit. And then I finally landed on my feet, here at Woodstown 5 years ago. And my first year at Woodstown, I knew again, like I got to get into the basketball program somehow. I don't care if I got to do it for free. I just want to coach. So Jeff Podolsky was the boys coach at Woodstown when I first got hired, and he took me in as a volunteer. I volunteered with the boys team for a year, learned a lot from him. And then the head coaching opportunity opened up on the girls' side when the coach at the time, Joe Racino, took a job somewhere else and basically had to step down. So I was asked if I would be interested, stepped in, and that's kind of all she wrote.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's I like your story because you showed a lot of perseverance, and you kind of stepped outside your comfort zone, but you ultimately knew what you wanted, and you knew the steps you had to take. And it's kind of tough. It's like you need experience in order to get that teaching job, but then how do you get a teaching job unless you get how are you gonna get hired because you can't get experience, right? So it's like you can't get that opportunity. But I tell you what, man, there's something about coaching, working with the kids and, getting an opportunity to see them grow and just in the whole thing about, them feeling good about themselves because you have, just great experiences. And I just think it really, really makes a difference in kids' lives. So for you to coach, it's just a fantastic opportunity. And I think that's, just fantastic. So what do you enjoy the most about the coaching?
If you probably would have asked me that a couple of years ago, I probably would have given you a different answer. But for me, as I've learned and as I've matured as a coach, what I love the most is the relationships that I build. Without those relationships, coaching to me is empty and it takes a lot of time. And I don't know that I would be as motivated to give up that time. I think about the amount of times I don't get to put my son to sleep because I'm out coaching and we got a game and it's past his bedtime. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm going to do that, it better be worth it for me, not from a financial standpoint. So if there's got to be a better why than just winning games or just wanting to turn a program around, put your stamp on a program, whatever. And for me, what I love the most about coaching is the relationships, because that to me is what coaching is all about. It's all about relationships.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I just love sports so much, because you have that common bond, and from the parent standpoint, we get to see on the sidelines, you get to watch your kids play, but then you become friends with, the parents of the kids that your kids play with, and you get to know each other for many, many years. So it's a great experience, and I just love seeing the kids grow up. So how would you describe your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, my coaching philosophy is basically based on the fact that I want our players to work hard. I want our players to be accountable, but I also believe that comes through what we talked about a couple of minutes ago, which is relationship. So for me, my philosophy is that they are people first, they're students second, and they're athletes third. And I've got to take the time to invest in the people side of that before I can ask anything of them as an athlete. So for me, it really depends on building that relationship. But once I've got that relationship, once I've got that bridge, then, we hold players accountable. We can hold them accountable to our standard. We communicate our expectations, and we do have a high level of expectations for our players. But when you build the relationship, they're able to meet it and they want to meet it.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So how would you describe yourself as a coach? Like, what's your style?
Mike, it's still in process, to be honest with you. I think if I'm being honest with you, my first couple of years, I wish I could go back and do it over again. My personality lends to be more intense, and I think at times I sacrificed the relationship for what I wanted done, if that makes sense. And the more that I mature and grow as a coach, the more I see that, again, it's all about relationships. I'm trying to temper that down. I am an intense guy, especially when you see me coaching in games and see me in practice with my team, it's like two different people. Thankfully, I built a relationship with my players that they understand that, yeah, I am passionate about coaching. I'm passionate about us executing what we work on in practice. I'm passionate about seeing us perform at a high level. And sometimes that can get misconstrued as I'm just screaming and yelling and I don't care. Couldn't be further from the truth. But my style, I'm trying to work on keeping myself a little more calm during games, because I think sometimes that helps the players to be more calm. And it always goes back to, for me now, am I willing to risk relationship for what I'm about to say? And if I'm about to say something that's going to risk relationship with a player just because I'm angry about something that happened or just because I want to get my point across, then I can't say it. So it's always, to me, about kind of being self-aware, just recognizing where I'm coming from when I'm saying what I'm saying. But I'm trying to kind of evolve in my style of coaching that lends to be a little more laid back, but still passionate, and not kind of putting that part of me aside.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about, coach, as you grow and mature, then, you put different things into perspective, and it definitely changes the way that you coach, especially when you've been there for a while, and you've been there for a good number of years. I mean, you're not like a first year coach. You've established your program, you have good relationships with your players. I mean, everything starts from there. Without those relationships, I think, it's going to be difficult to achieve any kind of success on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your team. Let's talk about Woodstown itself, the high school. So can you tell us a little bit about, the school history about, with basketball?
So, I mean, I have been there a little bit. So I've been there about 5 years. And one of the things I can tell you about the school is that it's really, really old. So when you drive by Woodstown, there's no doubt about it, man. That high school, it's a beautiful building, but it is old. As far as the program goes, the program has had some success over the years. But one of our team goals has been, for the last couple of years anyway, is to win a division, because Woodstown girls basketball hasn't won a division championship since 1974. And every time I go in the high school gym and you look at the banners and you look at that number, you're just kind of going, man, it's been 37 years since we've been able to put a date up on that banner. So right now, that's one of our main goals. But the program has had a lot of success in the past. We've had some good coaches, but right now we're kind of focused on putting that banner up there, man.
Yeah, I think that's a nice goal for the kids. Something to work
Yeah,
towards, tangible. Plus, you have a constant reminder every time you walk into the gym, like, hey, this is what we're working for. Like,
that's
our
right.
year is going to be on there, and we're going to be a part of the school history. And I think that's something cool for a kid. It helps them to really remember their high school years, and it gives them some purpose, which is fantastic. So let's talk
Yes.
about how last season, since that was like your last real full season that was like in the
Right.
I guess the normal era.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you talk about what your goals were going into last season?
Yeah, so as you said, we had a really good year last year. Last year was, I would say, a turning point for us. When I first took over the program, we went 7-19, 6-20, and then all of a sudden 21-7. So, a big change last year. And I think it was partially because of myself evolving as a coach. Obviously, all the credit goes to the girls. I mean, they're the ones that are out in the court. But I'll explain what I mean is I was dead set on playing man-to-man defense my first 2 years. That's how I played. That's how I was coached. And that's all the coaches that I ever coached under played. So that's kind of what I felt like, this is what we got to do. And I was a little headstrong about it. And I think for those first 2 years, I'm not saying that we would have won 21 games, but I certainly think that we could have done a little better, 6 and 7 wins, if we had maybe not had such a stubborn guy running the program. So all of a sudden, we look at our roster and we go, okay, like, what do we really need to do to put these girls in a position to be successful? Put your own, what's the word I'm looking for? Put your own preconceived ideas aside for a moment and kind of look at your roster and go, okay, what do you need to do? So we did switch, to a 2-3 zone. Not because I really wanted to, but because I really felt like this is what we need to do to be successful and to put our girls in a position to be successful. We changed what we did on offense, and our players got better. We had a lot of girls who put a lot of time in over the summer, put a lot of time in practice, and all of that combined, kind of paid off for us. So last year was a record-setting year for the school. We did, as a team, break the school record for wins, which was 19, and we won 21 games. You said that, you talked about what was some of the signature wins for us last year. One of the things that sticks out to me, and this is no disrespect at all to Haddon Township. Matter of fact, it's the exact opposite, because I talked to Tommy after that game. But beating Haddon Township at the end of February was probably the highlight of the year, because you look at a program like that, who I admire, Tom, from afar. I've seen what he's done at Haddon Township and have all the respect in the world for what he's accomplished as a Group 1 school and what their school's accomplished. But to beat them, in a very close game with all those people there at our home court at the end of the season, kind of capped off a really successful year for us. And, one of the other games that sticks out to me is Kingsway, because when we beat Kingsway, you're looking at a Group 4 school against a Group 1 school. And that was the game that we won that actually broke the school record. So we had a lot of quality wins last year, I feel like, but those two specifically really stick out to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one of the coaches I just interviewed was Coach Bup Robinson, and one of the coaches I hope to interview is Coach Tommy Mulligan. So our daughters played basketball together growing up. We have friends that are from Haddon Township, because my daughter played soccer out that way. We have a couple friends on the team, so we've been following their program, and he does run an excellent program. So for you to say that that's a quality win, I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, it's like one of those things where you have to beat certain teams to kind of like use them as a measuring stick for your team to see if there's improvement. And if you're beating a team that's, constantly making it and advancing pretty far in the Group 1 state championships or state tournament, I think that's a really quality win, and it shows, your growth and improvement for your team. So, here we are, it's COVID year now, and things are definitely different. So, as a coach, have you made any adjustment? What adjustments have you made to prepare your team for the season? So do you remember, I think it was it January? What was it? January 26th was the date. I think was the first when we first started. What was the first day?
January 16th.
Oh, 16th, yes.
Yeah.
So here we are, January 16th. And I'll tell you what, January 15th, I was like, I don't even know if we're going to get the season. So I wasn't really sure what happened. So, why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, as we sat down as coaches in our preseason coaches meetings that we had to ask ourselves that exact question, because we realized in a condensed season, we're not going to be able to, first of all, put in everything we want to put in. So we really had to prioritize what are the things that we need to make sure that we have in, and what are the things that, it'd be nice if we could put them in, but is it really going to help us? So we condensed our playbook down. That was one of the things we had to do. We also, in trying to, look out for our players, have had to adjust practice times. I'm a 2 hours a day practice guy, practice on Saturdays. But when you look at your schedule and you're playing 4 games in 5 nights, am I really helping my players by having them come in the next day for a 2-hour practice? Right. So we had to adapt by shortening our practices a little bit to try to save our legs. And in practice, we had to really look at how much running and conditioning do we want to do, because we definitely need to do it, versus how much teaching time. So in your practices, you're looking at how are you prioritizing your conditioning versus your walkthroughs. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and I don't know that we did it perfect, but I think at times our adjustments were the ones that we had to make.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I was going to ask you is, you've been in a situation this year where you've had more games in a week than practices. And it's typically not that way, where the season's dragged out. How do you prepare as a coach, when you have back-to-back games? I mean, you figure if you play a 4-game week, you're only going to have, minimum 2 practices. I mean, or maximum 2 practices. How do you deal with that?
Again, I mean, we have to look ahead. You got to be proactive, and you got to think ahead. So, like, if we have a practice on a Wednesday, but then we got back-to-back Thursday, Friday, we're prepping for 2 games essentially in 1 practice. But how much can you really prep for 2 games in an hour and a half or even a 2-hour practice? So again, you're prioritizing what you're actually going over and what you just need to talk to the team about. So what our scouting reports was a lot of communicating, but a lot less going through it in practice. So our players, and we told them this at the beginning of the season, this is going to be just as much of a mental season as it is a physical season. It's going to be tough physically, but we also got to be tough mentally, because if we're not focused and we're not retaining information and we're not studying our playbook and we're not doing the things mentally that we need to do to stay locked in, it's going to be a rough year. So just constantly communicating to the players about that, making sure that we're prioritizing our practice time and dividing it up as best we can. But Mike, it's not perfect. It can't be.
Yeah, I hear that. So, what are your team goals this year? What were your team goals like coming into the season? Because there's no state playoffs, there's no championships. I know that you have Tri-County. So what were your goals? Like, what did you want to have your team try to work on accomplishing this year?
Yeah, so when we talked to the team during our virtual workouts before the season actually started, and we laid out, kind of like what is our goals for the year. Obviously, we have goals for each individual player, but as a team, our goals were, number one, let's win the division. That's something that's right in front of us. That's something that we know we're playing for, especially not knowing, are we playing a tournament or not? Are we having any kind of postseason or not? So when you know that you've got that in front of you, that's a little extra motivation, because that's like the one thing you can have an opportunity to win. But aside from that, we talked about looking at our schedule, wanting to aim for a certain amount of wins above 500, because we felt like that was within reach. And outside of that, Mike, it was just don't get hurt, stay safe and stay healthy, and work hard and let the chips fall where they may. We don't talk a lot about winning games or winning X number of games. We set our goals at the beginning of the season, like I told you, and then that's it. Because I think if we talk too much about winning and losing, we lose the fact that we can't control that, we can only control how hard we play. We can only control how hard we practice and executing our game plan. That's it.
So how much do you feel that the live stream has helped your team, knowing that you're going to play, like, let's say, 4 games in a week? You don't have much time to practice. I mean, you can send them film on Huddle. You can send them scouting reports on like that. You can tell them to, watch their games just to see, how they did. So how valuable is that film now, that live stream?
Oh, man, that thing's great. First of all, I love the fact that we don't have to make sure that somebody films the game in the right way, because that thing films it great. And you get the download right after the game. But just like you said, I can have access to that game uploaded into Huddle, and they can watch film that night. But it's also great because they're watching other teams' games. Like if we have a practice night and we're getting done at, say, 5, and there's a team starting at 5:30, they can jump on the live stream and actually watch the game live, which was something they would never be able to do before. And so they're more likely to do that than they are for me to say, hey, go watch Huddle. They love logging in there. They love watching that live stream, and it's more exciting for them that they're watching a live game versus it feels more like homework when they're watching it on Huddle.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think the live stream, surprisingly, when we look back in a year or two from now, the live stream is going to be a difference maker in basketball in general, in the sport, because you can catch so many games. Like, think about parents that work and can't make it to the game.
Yep.
Now they can't watch, but now if they could just put it on demand and just, turn on YouTube or wherever you have your games, and you can watch the games at your leisure. I mean, it's going to get a lot of people to follow the players. They're going to know the players. They're going to feel a connection to the team. So I think in the long run, it's going to really help to grow the sport. And I'm really hoping that the little kids are watching, the live stream with maybe an older brother or sister with their parents. And that's really like, what I'm looking for. But, I watch live streams all week. If I'm bored and I have nothing to do, I did all my work, I did all my stuff at home for my wife as far as chores, I go on YouTube. Right. And I look, if I see a live game, doesn't matter who's playing, I put it on.
Right.
And it's a game, and it gives me something to get excited about. And, a lot of times too, I feel like you could support other programs. You could watch their team and you could see how they are. And in the long run, you get a better sense of, what the basketball is like in South Jersey, for sure.
That's right. Yeah. I love the fact that our girls can go on, and I like to tell them to go watch some teams up in North Jersey. When would they ever be able to see that? So they can go in there and when they're like, look at these teams, and not only are they learning, but they're seeing like, wow, there's a whole different level of competition that we've never even seen before.
Yeah, definitely. So like what schools are in your proximity, like your surrounding area? Like what schools are close to you?
So we've got Pennsville, Penns Groves, Salem, Salem Votech, Shalleck. You know, Gateway is not too far down the road. But once you get out of Salem County, I mean, Salem County is kind of tucked back all by itself. So you've got all those Salem County schools that I just named. And then you've got, like I said, Delsea is about 20 minutes away, you know, this way, Gateway. I think I already said them, you know, and then you start moving out to like Triton and stuff, and it's like 45 minutes away. So really those schools within that 15, 20-minute radius are all the schools in Salem County, because we are in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. No, that's cool, man. It's good to know like who's around because they become your rivals, but also you could become friends with the kids from the other schools just because the kids have played sports with each other or against each other growing up. So, that's again where that live stream becomes important because then you can get to see your friend who plays for, let's say Delsea or plays for,
Mhm.
Salem. You just turn on the live stream, watch your game, and then you can support them, which is fantastic.
Right, right.
So, talk about your varsity team. Like, what would you say are the strengths of your team this year?
Well, we pride ourselves on the defensive end, and that's for sure. And I think that that's something that they are very good at. They've gotten really good at playing our 2-3. We're a little more aggressive in it. We like to come out a little bit more. We do a lot of communicating, and when we communicate and when we don't communicate, there's a huge difference in the way our defense looks. But for the most part, our defense is our strength. And offensively, honestly, our strength is transition, our primary offense. We tell our girls all the time, if we don't have to run a half-court offense, that's better for us. Let's get out and run. We have good athletes on our teams that play, 2 other sports. So we're in good condition. We keep our girls in condition. We talk about wanting to be in great shape so that we can run on teams. So if you watch some of our games, you'll see that we're trying to get rebounds and we're trying to pitch up the court and get easy buckets without having to play any half-court offense. So I think those are the 2 things right now that we do pretty well.
Okay. So those are your strengths. What would you consider are like the keys to success for your team this year? So going into every game, I know it's probably going to overlap with what you just said, but what are your
Right.
keys to success for your team this year to be successful in games?
Well, specifically on the defensive end, we don't want to give up the paint. I mean, that's one of our big things. And obviously game plans change depending on different teams that you're playing. But overall, that's kind of one of the things that we talk about a lot. We can't give up middle penetration because that just breaks down our whole defense. The other thing is we got to talk on defense. We always talk about communicating, not only on defense, but on offense as well. But communication is huge. Also, on the offensive end, we want to take high quality shots. We don't want to get down the court. There's no shot clock. We tell them that all the time. Run your offense, get the shot that you want. We want good shot versus better shot, and we want the better shot. Moving the ball on both sides of the floor. Rebounding is huge for us. Too many times we've shot ourselves in the foot over the last couple of years playing a great defensive possession, but then having to play defense twice because we give up an offensive rebound. And then limiting turnovers. I listened to Pat Summitt one time talk about at a halftime meeting with her team that the game of basketball is a game of possessions and it's a game of wills, right? So we talk about every possession matters. We can't treat the ball like it's a commodity. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of the ball, not only on the offensive end, but we want the ball back on the defensive end. So those are some of the things that generically on a night in, night out basis, we really try to drive home with our girls.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned about taking a better shot because I
Mm-hmm.
think that really takes a lot of maturity on players' levels because I think sometimes they rush their shot and they miss out on other opportunities where if they would just think about it for a second. And if they didn't have the best shot, give it up to somebody else on the team. You're more likely
Mm-hmm.
to make the shot. I mean, I always talk about taking a high percentage shot.
That's right.
Give up that. A lot of times teams right now, and I think because of the NBA game, is they work the ball, and as soon as they get a 3-point opportunity, they shoot the 3-pointer. Then the ball is going along, and you lose possession of the ball. So it's like a wasted possession.
That's
And
exactly right.
too many of them in a row. Now the game swings in the other team's favor, especially if they're converting 2 or 3 times after getting the rebound. Now you're down by 6 if it was a tie score. You know what I mean? So it's like,
That's right.
that's really important. I think that's great that you're talking about that with your team. And I think a lot of people, if they would just listen to the fact that that basketball possession is so important and each one really matters, I bet you that the game would be played a little bit differently too. So I just that's
Absolutely.
awesome. I mean, that shows a lot of maturity from you as a coach. But I
Yeah, I
just love
appreciate that.
to learn from Coach Summit. I mean, one of the best in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some. I think it was Gino Auriemma said that basketball coaches are the biggest thieves, man. And I agree with it. I steal things from everybody because I think I've got, there's so much out there, and people who've been around the game who know more about the game. So to not take things from those coaches and not put those things into your program, if the best in the world are doing it, then why aren't we? That's the way I think about it.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you coached with, several coaches, in your career. So, how much do you think that influenced you and gave you an advantage now that you're a head coach? Because you were able to learn from not just one person, but several coaches.
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Like for me, I worked under some coaches. So when you coach under somebody and just one person, you just learn from that one person. And a lot of times you end up taking all the stuff you learn from them and taking it into your program. But the benefit that I had was I coached with, Bob Parks, who was a good coach at Delsea for a long time. Dave Orlandini, who played at Princeton, coached at Vineland and coached at Delsea. Rob Riles, who's still coaching now over there at Delsea. My buddy Kevin Griffin, who was a college basketball coach down in Virginia. So I got to pick and choose, man. It was like a buffet of, I like this, I don't like this. I don't like the way they did this. I don't like this philosophy. So for me, it really gave me a lot of options. I wasn't pigeonholed into just what I learned from one coach. And so when I think about putting in a man offense, for example, I can change based on our personnel because I've got 3 or 4 different coaches who coach man offense who I can pull from. Same thing with zone, same thing with defense. And I still call those guys today. I mean, I don't feel like I'm ever done learning. So I have a wealth of knowledge at my disposal that, I don't know that a lot of coaches have. They're having to kind of figure it out for themselves. And while I do my own research and I spend a lot of time studying, to have those people at my fingertips is just an added bonus for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, you actually had the I guess, extra advantage of coaching in college. So how much of coaching in college, actually influenced you to help your players prepare for the next level?
I'm sorry, I don't know if you heard. I didn't coach in college.
But you said you helped your friend though, right? So he got you to coach.
Yeah, he got me into coaching. We didn't coach together. He was coaching down in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
He got me a job at a high school teaching. I coached at the high school down there.
Got it.
But I did run camps with him.
Okay.
I did all that. So he coached at Eastern Mennonite University. He was the head women's basketball coach.
Okay.
And I went down there, and this is actually how I got to know the area while I was still living up here and still had a relationship with him. I went down there every summer and ran 2 weeks of summer camp with him, with the women's side, and then with the boys coach on the men's side. And for 5 years, probably, I went down there every summer. So I'm learning from the 2 college coaches, and they both had successful programs while they were there. And then when I moved down there, I started coaching with the high school team at the high school that I was teaching at. But, went to his practices, watched his games. And there's a higher level of thinking, that goes into the college game. The competition is tougher. So a lot of what they do is a little more complex. A lot of the skills and the fundamentals that they teach are things that somebody like me probably wouldn't think about if I was just around a high school coach. So it was definitely, really helpful for me to gather that from both of those guys while I was with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to get that influence and just to see the difference in styles. And I think the other thing that might be different in college is that you have players that are just focused on one sport, where you're dealing with kids that play 3 sports. So you got a girl that just came off of soccer. She's, coming right into basketball. Then maybe that girl is going to go play softball or lacrosse in the spring. So, you're getting kids who are well-rounded athletes, who can adjust on the fly, and they can take their, experience from different sports, But, I think it's different when you're coaching a person who just focuses on one, especially when you get to a higher level, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you tell your girls that would want to play in college? Like, what would you recommend for your girls, the best way to prepare for them that want to play at the next level?
Honestly, I heard this quote from, I'm a quote guy. I probably said this 3 times already. But it was a quote that Kobe Bryant actually said, and it was that the best never get bored with the basics. And I tell our kids that all the time. It's written on the top of every one of my practice plans. And if I was going to tell them and talk about getting ready for college, it was, you better be fundamentally sound. You better be able to establish a pivot foot. You better be in triple threat every time you catch a pass. You better be able to shoot off the dribble. You better be able to handle the ball. You better be able to play defense. It's all these little things that, we just look at the stats. We look at the scoring and we think, well, I scored 1,000 points in high school, so that means I can play in college. And college coaches got 5 or 6 girls in their bench that are 1,000-point scorers. That's not what separates you. What separates you is being able to do all the little things the right way and be a great kid. That's a huge thing that college coaches are looking for. There is no college coach that I've ever talked to that would take a kid who has shown that they have poor character or shown that they have bad body language, but just because they can play. I've known a lot of coaches, including my buddy, Kevin, who I talked about a little bit, who would pass on players no matter how good they were if they had poor body language, didn't look a coach in the eye, were disrespectful, and wasn't a good person. So be a good person, be a good student, and make sure you know your fundamentals.
That's really great advice. We're getting to the end of our interview. This is the part where I usually ask coaches, their opinion and maybe for some ideas on, how we can grow the sport, as a whole in the South Jersey community, but also in our own little community. So, what would you do? What would you focus on to grow the sport?
I think it's a good question. I had to think about it because when I look at what we're already doing, when I look at what the Carino Club is doing, when I look at what Mike is doing with the SJIBT, when I look at what you're doing now, interviewing players and coaches, it's like we're doing a pretty good job as it is, kind of getting the word out. But I really have tried to be active on social media because that's what people are on right now. So if a lot of coaches were really committed, and it sounds so simple, but if we were really committed to promoting our own programs on social media and promoting other teams, congratulating other teams, talking about other teams, creating kind of that camaraderie, I think that goes a long way in showing just how tight knit of a group that we are as South Jersey girls basketball. But like I think about other little things too, like whenever there's a doubleheader, who plays last? It's usually the boys team, right?
Yeah.
And there's little things that you can do to put the girls programs in prime time positions to get the people to come to the games, to get people to watch the games, rather than kind of it's boys basketball and then it's girls basketball. I think it's nothing. I don't think anybody's doing it on purpose, and I don't think it's anybody's fault. I just think that's the way that we grew up. That's the way it's always been. But I think, when you look around South Jersey and you look at the talent that some of these schools have and some of the successful programs like Cherokee, that are around, it's like, man, why not promote them? Why not put them in the limelight? Give them those primetime spots because it shows that we're committed to getting the girls' programs out there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love your idea. The one thing I would say do is we guys got to figure out a better way to get people to figure out the live streams,
That's a
um,
great point. Yeah.
because I know everybody wants to watch, and unless you subscribe to somebody's channel, like you don't know when the games are. I think number one, I think it's hard to find people's schedule. Like you don't know when their games are unless you're from that school and you have access to their calendar. I've just got into the habit of going to the Tri-County, their conference page, the Olympic conference page, the Cal, whatever conference page. I go to all the
Right.
conference pages because I kind of want to see, who they're playing and get a sense of like, who's in their division and things like that. But the average person isn't going to be able to have the time or even know where to look. So making schedules more readily available, I think, is a good one. And
Yeah.
and then also figuring out the live streams. Like anytime there's a schedule, honestly, now in the papers, if they're putting it out or they're putting on on the internet, it should have a link to the live stream
To the live stream.
time. That way more people can watch those games. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
most watch games, I think, this year, and I didn't get a chance to watch it because it was on the NFHS channel, and I have to go back and watch it, was probably, I would have to say, Trenton Catholic versus St. John Vianney.
Yeah.
I mean, they had you know, Brian DeCane, and they had Luis Torres from NewJersey.com there. And then they had a guy from the Asbury Park Press. They had all kinds of people there, and they were all tweeting from this game. I mean, it was really heavily covered.
Yes.
A game like that is great for New Jersey overall. I mean, it gives us exposure, but it gives the kids in our area something, like you said, to strive for. Like, how often do we get a chance to watch those teams play, right?
That's right. We hear about them a lot, but to have the opportunity to not only watch them, but to make it easy, like you said, I think it's a great point. If we could go on, NJ.com, for example, and look at all the games for that day, and then every game had a link to their live stream. Yeah. I mean, you have people watching games all day long.
Yeah, because there are people that are the junkies like us. They enjoy
right.
basketball, and like, plus you hear about somebody so much in the paper or on the internet. You're like, well, I got to see what this person looks like. I want to see if they really are a great player, or if they are a great player, I want to actually see them in action. So I think that would be fantastic.
I agree. There's one more thing I like to talk about, and I don't know if you can edit this and kind of put it back to where you're talking about the program and our philosophy. But if I don't talk about this, then my girls are going to be like, you tell us all this time, and how you not bring it up? But one of the things about our philosophy and our program is that we have a theme. And my first couple of years, I would change the theme every year, but we've had this theme now this is our second year, and it's just going to stay our program's theme. And I'm not claiming that I created it. I did steal it. I modified it for our team, but our theme for our program is row the boat. And I took it from the University of Minnesota's football team and their head coach, PJ Fleck. You may have seen something they did on ESPN about it, but we adapted it for our program. To put it simply, the boat has three parts that we focus on, and that's the oar, the boat, and the people in the boat, and the direction you're facing, basically. And the oar represents the hard work. And we always talk about that. If we're going to be successful, it's going to start with hard work, but not just from one person, every person in the boat. The boat itself represents our accountability. It's the sacrifice. It's the people that we're fighting for in the boat. And we always talk about the only people that matter are the ones who are in the boat. And then the last thing is our direction. And our direction, when you're in the boat, and what I'm specifically talking about is that the sport crew, your back is to where you're going. And because your back is to where you're going, you can't see the future. So we don't talk about the future because we can't control it, nor can we see it. But where we're facing is we have a very limited view of the past. We remember it, but it doesn't dictate what we do now. But what we really focus on is all we have is the present, right? So as long as we're putting in the work and everybody's doing their part, as long as we're accountable to the people that are in the boat, and as long as we're focused on the present, then we're in pretty good shape. And I think it's helped us the last couple of years for sure.
Wow, man. If we're going to end an interview, I think that's a mic drop right there, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate that, man. I'm sitting there going, man, how did I forget to say that? But yeah, that's something that really our program is thriving on right now.
That's just fantastic. The one thing I appreciate, that you did today is you shared a lot of like insight and a lot of motivation. And I think that that's one thing that coaches are responsible for, is for motivating their players. And some coaches are better at it than others, and that's just that's fine. But you are not afraid to like go to other people and use other people for inspiration to kind of do your own thing. And that's the way I do my stuff anyway.
Right.
I mean, is there ever really a unique idea? Probably not. It's probably been thought about before. You just take somebody's idea and you just make it better, or you adapt it. You know. And I think that's the way that you become successful in life, is you learn from everybody you meet, you learn from everybody you work with, and you take the best of everybody and you make your own style, you make your own, your own way. And then all of a sudden here you are.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I agree. Totally. 100%.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I just want to say thanks for coming on. This was a great interview.
Not a problem.
I think everyone's really going to enjoy it. And I just wish your team continued success, and I hope to talk to you in the future.
All right, Mike. Hey, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. Enjoyed our conversation, man. Hope to see you soon.
All right, take care. Bye.
All right, bye bye.